John Mitchell settled into seat 17E with a sigh, his backpack wedged under the seat in front of him. The hum of the plane's engines was comforting in a way, a constant reminder that he was moving forward, literally and figuratively. He glanced at his daughter, Emma, sitting beside him, her small hands clutching a worn-out stuffed rabbit. At 8 years old, she was a whirlwind of curiosity and energy, and today she had already asked him 20 questions about the clouds, the flight, and why airplane food was so questionable. "Daddy, do you think the plane can do loops?" she asked, eyes wide. John chuckled softly. "Not loops, pumpkin. Planes like this don't fly like fighter jets. They go straight and steady." Emma frowned, unconvinced. "Then it's boring. I want a plane that can zoom and spin." He ruffled her hair, smiling at the way her curls bounced. Being a single dad wasn't easy, but moments like these, quiet, ordinary enough to be almost invisible, made it worthwhile. He pulled out a small book from his bag, hoping it might distract her for a bit. The flight attendants began their routine, moving down the aisle with carts clattering and voices chirping through the cabin. John kept one eye on Emma as she peered out the window, her tiny face pressed to the glass. Outside, the world stretched endlessly, fields turning into miniature patches of green and brown, roads weaving like thread. "Daddy, look," she exclaimed, pointing. "The cars are so tiny." "They are," he said. "It's like a little toy world down there. But remember, we're the real ones up here." The plane reached cruising altitude, and the hum of engines became a steady background lullaby. Emma leaned against him, her eyelids heavy. John felt a pang of tenderness and exhaustion. He'd been running on little sleep for weeks, juggling work, school, and everything else life had thrown his way since his wife passed. The plane was supposed to be a break, a simple trip to visit his parents for the weekend. Then, without warning, the intercom crackled to life. "Ladies and gentlemen, attention please," a voice said, tinged with an unfamiliar urgency. Any fighter pilot on board. Please respond immediately. This is not a drill." John froze mid-breath. The normal, mundane background noise of the cabin vanished from his awareness. Around him, passengers shifted nervously, eyes widening, whispers spreading like wildfire. Emma stirred beside him, sensing the tension. "What's wrong, Daddy?" she asked, clutching his arm. He swallowed hard, forcing a calmness he didn't feel. I don't know, pumpkin. Probably just a security thing. Nothing to worry about." But inside, John's mind raced. Fighter pilot, that wasn't a term used lightly. He scanned the cabin surreptitiously, noting the reactions of other passengers, some tense, some outright scared. Flight attendants whispered to each other near the front of the plane, their faces pale. The intercom crackled again. "We repeat, any fighter pilot on board. Your immediate assistance is required." John's heart pounded. He was just a single dad in 17E, an ordinary man with an ordinary life. He had never touched a military plane in his life, never fired a weapon, never imagined himself in a crisis like this. Yet the urgency in the voice, the panic it carried, gripped him. He looked down at Emma, her eyes wide and trusting. He couldn't let fear take over, not for her. Somehow, he had to navigate this moment, protect her, and figure out what the hell was happening. The plane seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the sky remained a serene, untroubled blue. But inside 17E, John Mitchell realized that his ordinary day, his ordinary life, had just been pulled into something extraordinary and terrifying. John's hands tightened. Around the armrests of 17E as murmurs of confusion and fear rippled through the cabin. Passengers who had moments ago been reading books or scrolling on phones now turned toward the front, searching for answers. Some faces were pale, some frozen, others frantic. The ordinary hum of a commercial flight had transformed into something unrecognizable, a tense, fragile stillness where everyone waited for the next word. Emma clung to him, her small hands gripping the sleeve of his shirt. "Daddy, why are they asking that?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. John swallowed. I don't know," he said, forcing a calmness that felt brittle. He looked around, trying to gauge the seriousness of the situation. Maybe they're just looking for someone trained to help. That's all. Just stay calm, okay?" His words sounded hollow even to his own ears. No one spoke directly to the passengers about what was happening, just the repeated, panicked intercom messages. Any fighter pilot on board. Immediate assistance required. Please respond. A flight attendant, her face pale, hurried past with a headset clutched tightly in her hands. She exchanged tense words with the co-pilot visible through the small cockpit window. The hushed whispers didn't escape John, who caught phrases like, unidentified aircraft, and, potential threat on approach. John's chest tightened. He had flown before, sure, but only as a passenger. The words, potential threat, drilled into him. He was just a dad trying to get his daughter to her grandparents' house, yet suddenly he felt as though the entire cabin, every life in it, rested on the reactions of someone capable of action. Emma leaned against him, her small form trembling slightly. Daddy, I'm scared. He kissed the top of her head. I know, pumpkin, I'm scared too, but we'll be okay. Just stay close to me. Nearby, a man in a business suit whispered urgently into his phone. A woman gripped the arm of her elderly companion, murmuring reassurances she probably didn't believe herself. Panic was subtle but growing, a quiet current running beneath the cabin's surface. John's mind raced. There were no fighter pilots here, he was painfully certain of that. Yet the repeated calls implied imminent danger. What if it's serious? He thought, glancing at the serene blue sky outside the window. It didn't match the fear building inside. Then a louder voice crackled over the intercom, almost desperate this time. Anyone trained, military, combat, fighter pilot, please come forward. This is urgent. Threat is inbound. You are our only option. Passengers exchanged worried glances. A few shook their heads. Others whispered to one another, debating if someone should step up. No one did. John felt a cold weight in his stomach. He glanced at Emma, her eyes wide, searching his face for guidance. For a split second, he imagined himself frozen in panic, as useless as everyone else around him. But then something shifted, an instinct he hadn't known he possessed. He straightened his back. He might not be a fighter pilot, but he was a protector. He was her dad. That had to count for something. Emma, he said quietly, locking eyes with her. I need you to do exactly what I say, okay? Hold my hand, and no matter what happens, stay right next to me. Can you do that? She nodded, her lips trembling but her grip firm. John looked forward, toward the cockpit door, and swallowed hard. Ordinary dads weren't trained for fighter threats or mid-air emergencies. But ordinary dads could be brave. And right now, there was no one else to step up. Somewhere, at the front of the plane, the tension intensified. The intercom clicked on again, louder than before. This is not a drill. Any fighter pilot, your immediate response is required. John's heart raced. He felt the enormity of the situation crash down on him. One ordinary man in 17E, just a single dad, was about to face something entirely extraordinary. And for the first time, he realized fear alone wasn't enough. He would have to act. The intercom fell silent for a few heartbeats, but the quiet did nothing to calm the cabin. If anything, it magnified the tension. Passengers fidgeted, whispering urgently to one another, while some stared blankly out the windows, as if willing the serene sky to betray no hint of the threat the crew had warned about. John gripped Emma's hand tightly. He could feel the tiny tremors of her fingers, the subtle shaking that came from fear mixed with confusion. He swallowed hard. I'm the only one who can keep her calm right now, he thought, scanning the cabin as though a miracle might present itself. A trained pilot, a retired officer, anyone who could step forward. There was no one. Another announcement crackled over the intercom, sharper this time, almost desperate. Attention all passengers. Any individual with fighter or combat experience, your immediate assistance is required. This is not a drill. Repeat. Not a drill. A woman near the aisle gasped audibly, her hands flying to her mouth. John could see the panic ripple across the rows like electricity. He caught the eye of a man in the opposite aisle, a burly figure in his 40s, and silently asked the question, "Do you know what to do?" The man shook his head. It was then that John realized the truth. No one knew what to do. Not really. Except me. He wasn't a fighter pilot. Not even close. But he was trained, if you could call it that, in emergency thinking, in problem solving under pressure. Years of balancing deadlines, Soccer practices, doctor appointments, and the daily chaos of single parenthood had made him good at one thing: staying calm when chaos threatened to break everyone else. John leaned closer to Emma. "Pumpkin, listen, we need to stay focused. Nothing we do in panic will help. But we can do smart things. Can you stay calm with me?" She nodded, her eyes wide and serious, mimicking his composure. Then the plane shuddered slightly, a small, almost imperceptible jolt, but enough to draw gasps from passengers. A warning light blinked faintly on the panel near the cockpit. The murmurs escalated into whispers of fear. John's mind raced. He didn't know the technical details. He didn't know what the crew had seen or the nature of the threat. But he knew enough to stay alert, to observe, and to act decisively if required. A flight attendant appeared at the front of the cabin, her hands shaking as she gripped the railing. "Sir," she said, addressing John directly, "please, can you?" "I don't know how to fly a fighter," John said quickly, cutting her off. "I'm not that kind of pilot. But tell me what's happening. I can help with coordination, or anything else you need." She hesitated, then nodded toward the cockpit. "There's a fast-approaching aircraft, unidentified. Our communication channels aren't responding. The captain, we need someone to assess and assist if possible." "You're calm. You seem capable." John's heart thudded. "Capable? Me?" He glanced at Emma, who was clutching the rabbit so tightly it looked like it might snap in half. He took a deep breath, feeling the surge of adrenaline lace with the protective instinct that had defined every day of his life as a single dad. "I can't fail her. I won't fail her." He stood, trying to mask the quiver in his voice. "Okay," he said firmly. "Let's do this. Tell me what I need to do, step by step. I'll follow instructions exactly." The flight attendant's relief was palpable. "Step 1, she said quickly, "get to the front, observe the cockpit, and be ready to relay any instructions. Captain can guide you from there. We don't have anyone else." John nodded, glancing back at Emma. She gave him a small, determined smile, the kind that somehow made him feel both more terrified and more invincible at the same time. He bent down and whispered, "I'll be right back, Pumpkin. Hold on tight. Keep calm, just like we practiced." She nodded, her eyes locked on his. "I will, Daddy." With that, John moved up the aisle, the weight of every life in the cabin pressing on him, the ordinary world he had known slipping further away. He was just a single dad in 17E, until now, when courage, necessity, and instinct demanded he become something else entirely. And somewhere above the clouds, a threat was waiting, moving closer with every heartbeat. John's shoes clicked sharply against the narrow aisle as he approached the cockpit, each step echoing with the weight of fear and responsibility. The cabin felt like it had been sucked into a vacuum, passengers frozen in place, eyes wide, waiting for someone, anyone, to take action. And now it was him. A single dad in 17E, suddenly thrust into a role he had never imagined. He reached the cockpit door, and the flight attendant opened it with a trembling hand. Inside, the captain sat rigid, scanning multiple screens, fingers hovering over the controls. The co-pilot's knuckles were white on the yoke. Outside the windshield, the sky seemed calm, deceptively ordinary, yet John could feel the tension like a pulse beneath the calm blue. "Sir," the captain said, voice tight, "we don't have time for hesitation. There's an unidentified aircraft closing fast, no response on radio. Any fighter pilot would know the protocol, but right now, we need someone to coordinate, observe, and relay instructions. Can you handle it?" John swallowed. I can try," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I just need to know exactly what you need me to do." The captain nodded. "Keep eyes on the incoming aircraft. Tell me if anything changes. Speed, altitude, heading. You'll be our extra pair of eyes and decision-making support. Follow instructions exactly." John nodded, feeling the adrenaline sharpen every sense. He pressed himself against the cockpit window and peered into the sky. There it was, a sleek, dark aircraft, moving unnervingly fast, its silhouette stark against the blue. The pilot's maneuvers were aggressive but calculated, almost as if testing the plane, testing the crew. "Speed?" John asked, keeping his voice low but urgent. "Too fast for our jet to maneuver," the captain replied grimly. "But we can try evasive patterns if we coordinate." John's pulse raced. He wasn't a fighter pilot, but he had logic, observation, and calm under pressure, the skills of a man who had survived the chaos of life as a single dad. He scanned the aircraft, noting subtle changes in direction and speed. Heading change, slight, 20 degrees left. They're adjusting for intercept. The co-pilot adjusted the plane, following John's observations. Every passenger's life, and his daughter's, depended on these choices. Then came the moment of truth. The unidentified aircraft made a sudden approach, directly aligned with their path. The captain tensed. Brace for evasive maneuvers in 3, 2. John's mind raced. He could almost hear the chaos, the screams that might come if panic overtook the cabin. But Emma's calm face flashed in his memory. He gritted his teeth. Not now. Not on my watch. He relayed the instructions from the cockpit to the crew, every word precise, every movement coordinated. Adjust left 2 degrees, maintain altitude. Steady. Now increase speed slightly, follow my observation. The plane shuddered as it veered, narrowly avoiding the incoming aircraft. The cabin lurched. Passengers gripped their seats, some gasping, some silently praying. John's hands trembled, but he forced himself to remain still, focused, aware of every flicker outside. After tense moments that felt like hours, the threat began to pull away, the other aircraft banking sharply and disappearing into the distance. The captain exhaled, voice barely audible over the fading hum. Good work. You helped us stabilize. Couldn't have done it without you. John sagged in relief, knees almost buckling. He looked at the passengers, Emma still wide-eyed, holding her rabbit tightly, but alive. The ordinary man in 17E had faced the extraordinary and survived. He returned to his seat, knees weak, heart still racing, but a fierce sense of pride swelling inside him. Emma leaned against him, whispering, "Daddy, you saved us." He hugged her tightly. "We saved each other, pumpkin. We stayed calm. That's how we win." For a single dad in 17E, what started as a normal flight had become a crucible of courage, instinct, and love. And as the plane cruised steadily toward its destination, the ordinary man realized something profound. Sometimes, extraordinary heroism doesn't come from training or titles, it comes from a single heart refusing to let fear win.